The mysterious guest arrives. At the Grand Arcadia, a proud and ambitious receptionist, Olivia, dismisses a scruffy-looking guest, unaware he's the secret owner of the hotel. What starts as a routine check-in soon becomes a life-changing lesson about humility and kindness. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, don't forget to subscribe, you won't want to miss what happens next. The sky over Los Angeles was painted in streaks of gold and pink as the sun dipped below the horizon. The city buzzed with life, cars honking, lights flickering, and footsteps echoing against the sidewalks. In the heart of downtown stood the Grand Arcadia Hotel *, a towering symbol of luxury and sophistication. Celebrities, CEOs, and dignitaries frequented its marble-clad lobby, where the scent of fresh lilies mingled with the crisp aroma of espresso from the cafe. Inside, the front desk gleamed beneath a chandelier that dripped with crystals. Behind the counter stood Olivia Hastings, sharp, efficient, and ambitious. At 29, she was determined to climb the corporate ladder, believing that appearances were everything. For Olivia, the guests were more than customers, they were stepping stones to her success. If you weren't rich, famous, or influential, you barely existed in her eyes. It was a quiet Tuesday evening when the sliding glass doors whooshed open. A man stepped inside. His stride was calm and unhurried, but there was something about him, a quiet presence that seemed out of place in the glitzy environment. He was tall, with dark hair that fell just past his shoulders. His worn leather jacket and faded jeans contrasted sharply with the designer suits and silk dresses of the usual clientele. Olivia, scrolling through her phone behind the desk, barely glanced up. She had seen all kinds of guests, billionaires, rock stars, even royalty. This man didn't fit the mold. He was ordinary, maybe even a little scruffy. Tourists like him usually couldn't afford the lobby cafe, let alone a room at the Grand Arcadia. The man approached the desk with a polite nod. "Good evening," he said, his voice smooth and warm. "I'd like to book a room." Olivia's perfectly arched eyebrow lifted as she scanned him up and down. His boots were scuffed, his beard a little unkempt. Definitely not their typical guest. She forced a tight-lipped smile. "I'm afraid our rooms start at $2,500 per night, sir. Are you sure you're in the right place?" He chuckled softly, as if he'd heard that tone before. "I'm sure," he replied, sliding an ID across the counter. The name on it was simple enough, *K. Reeves. Olivia didn't bother reading the full name. With a sigh, she tapped at her keyboard. "Well, we do have a room available. But we require an advance payment and a credit card for incidentals." Her tone was crisp, borderline dismissive. "Of course," he said, pulling a sleek black credit card from his wallet. It was one of those ultra-exclusive cards with no limit, but Olivia barely spared it a glance. People faked those things all the time. As she processed the payment, Olivia decided to assert her authority. "Just to be clear," she said, her smile tinged with condescension, "we expect our guests to maintain a certain standard. Dress code is enforced in the lounge, and we don't allow outside food. Also, our staff isn't here to cater to unusual requests." The man's lips twitched slightly, but he remained courteous. "I'll keep that in mind," he said. When the payment cleared without a hitch, Olivia's facade slipped for a moment. Still, she handed him the room key with a mechanical smile. "Penthouse floor. Take the private elevator on your right." "Thank you," he said softly, accepting the key. "By the way, what's your name?" She hesitated. Guests didn't usually ask. "Olivia," she answered, lifting her chin. "Nice to meet you, Olivia," he said, turning toward the elevator. For a moment, she thought there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes, but she brushed it off. No way someone like him mattered. As he walked away, Olivia shook her head. "These wannabes," she muttered under her breath. "You'd think they'd know their place." Little did she know, the man she had just dismissed so easily wasn't just another guest. He was the silent owner of the Grand Arcadia Hotel, and her attitude. It hadn't gone unnoticed. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft chime as Keanu Reeves leaned against the polished gold railing. The quiet hum of the lift contrasted sharply with the unwelcoming encounter he had just experienced. He had come here unannounced, with no entourage, no reservations under his name, just a desire to see how his hotel was being run from a guest's perspective. He exhaled, shaking his head with an amused smirk. He had dealt with arrogance before, but Olivia Hastings had taken it to a whole new level. The way she had scanned him like he was a stray off the street, the thinly veiled condescension in her voice, it all reminded him of why he often avoided the excesses of fame. Money and power didn't make people better, sometimes, they just made them crueler. The elevator came to a halt at the penthouse level, and the doors opened to reveal a luxurious hallway adorned with deep mahogany wood and soft golden lighting. A hotel attendant, an older gentleman named Richard, was waiting by the suite entrance. "Ah, Mr. Reeves, welcome back," Richard greeted warmly, his kind eyes crinkling. He had been with the Grand Arcadia * 4 years and had known Keanu well, though few others did. Keanu smiled. "Hey, Richard. Good to see you. I trust everything is in order," the attendant asked as he opened the suite door. Keanu chuckled, stepping inside. "Let's just say the front desk could use a little hospitality training." Richard's face tightened with concern, but he said nothing. After all, it wasn't his place to comment on management decisions. The penthouse suite was a masterpiece of modern elegance. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, and a fireplace flickered warmly against the sleek, minimalist decor. Despite the luxury, Keanu felt no particular attachment to it, he had always preferred simpler spaces. He set his bag down and walked over to the bar, pouring himself a glass of water. His mind replayed the encounter with Olivia. Her arrogance hadn't just been about enforcing hotel policy, there had been something else, something deeper. She had judged him by his appearance, assumed he was beneath her, and dismissed him without a second thought. Keanu wasn't one for revenge or public humiliation. But he did believe in accountability. And right now, the Grand Arcadia was his responsibility. He picked up the hotel phone and dialed a number. "Mr. Bennett?" Keanu spoke calmly when the general manager answered. "It's Keanu. I need a favor." Downstairs, Olivia continued her shift, blissfully unaware that her last guest was anything but ordinary. She had moved on quickly, now focused on the real VIPs, an oil tycoon from Dubai and his wife, both draped in designer attire. These were the kinds of guests she wanted to impress, the ones whose favor could elevate her career. As she attended to them with her most dazzling smile, the assistant manager, Jacob, approached her desk. He looked a bit nervous. "Olivia," he said, lowering his voice, "Mr. Bennett wants to see you in his office." She frowned, glancing at the clock. It was unusual for the general manager to call in employees mid-shift unless something was seriously wrong. "Did he say why?" she asked, adjusting her blazer. Jacob hesitated. "No, but I'd go now if I were you." Something about his tone made her uneasy. But she took a deep breath, straightened her posture, and made her way toward the manager's office. She wasn't worried, whatever it was, she would handle it. After all, she was one of the best at her job. What she didn't know was that the guest she had so rudely dismissed was about to change everything. Olivia's heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she made her way to the general manager's office. Despite Jacob's vague warning, she felt no real concern. If anything, she assumed Mr. Bennett wanted to discuss a promotion. She had been working tirelessly, after all. No one handled the hotel's most demanding guests better than she did. When she reached the door marked James Bennett, General Manager, she took a calming breath, smoothed her blazer, and knocked twice. "Come in," a deep voice answered. Olivia pushed the door open, stepping into the impeccably organized office. Mr. Bennet sat behind his large mahogany desk, his face serious. Across from him, to her surprise, sat the scruffy man from earlier, the one she had written off as a nobody. Her stomach twisted, but she quickly masked it with a professional smile. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Bennet?" she asked, pointedly avoiding eye contact with the man she had so easily dismissed. "Mr. Bennet gestured to the empty chair beside Keanu. "Please, have a seat." Olivia hesitated for only a second before moving gracefully to the chair. She crossed her legs neatly, her face composed. Whatever this was, she would handle it the same way she handled everything else, calmly and efficiently. "Do you know why you're here?" Mr. Bennet began, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "I assume it's about my performance," Olivia replied smoothly. "If so, I'd like to assure you that I'm fully committed to maintaining the hotel's high standards. Tonight alone, I secured reservations for 2 elite guests." A faint smile tugged at Keanu's lips. Her confidence was almost admirable, if it weren't for the thin layer of arrogance beneath it. Mr. Bennet's expression didn't soften. "Actually," he said, "this is about how you treated Mr. Reeves." Olivia blinked, then flicked her gaze toward Keanu for the first time. He was watching her with an unreadable expression, calm, patient, but with a sharpness she hadn't noticed before. Something shifted uneasily in her gut. "With all due respect, Mr. Bennet," she began carefully, "I followed hotel policy. I was polite, clear about our pricing, and I processed the guest's payment without issue." "And yet," Mr. Bennet interjected, "Mr. Reeves reported that you were less than welcoming." She swallowed the rest of her protest. This was absurd. Who even was this guy? Some eccentric millionaire with a chip on his shoulder? Olivia shifted in her seat, choosing her words carefully. "I simply assumed he was unfamiliar with our rates. I've encountered situations where guests are surprised by the cost, and I wanted to ensure there was no misunderstanding." "And do you make a habit of assuming guests can't afford our hotel?" Keanu asked quietly. His voice was calm, but the question cut through the air like a blade. For the first time that night, Olivia felt a tremor of doubt creep in. There was something about the way he spoke, not defensive, not angry, but entirely in control. I try to assess situations as they arise," she said, struggling to maintain her composure. "We cater to a very specific clientele, and I strive to protect the hotel's reputation." Mr. Bennet sighed and leaned back in his chair. "Perhaps you're unaware," he said, his voice cooling, "but Mr. Reeves isn't just a guest. He's the owner of the Grand Arcadia." The words slammed into Olivia like a physical blow. For a split second, her carefully constructed facade cracked, and her breath caught in her throat. The owner? The disheveled man she had condescended to, the one she had all but humiliated, was the man who owned the very hotel she had been so proud to represent. Olivia's voice faltered, but she quickly recovered. "I didn't realize." "I noticed," Keanu said simply, his expression still unreadable. Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. For the first time in her career, Olivia felt her confidence slipping. Mr. Bennet's voice cut through the tension. "I'd like to give Mr. Reeves the floor. Whatever he decides regarding your future here, I will support." Olivia's heart pounded in her chest. Whatever happened next was entirely in Keanu Reeves' hands, and for the first time, she wasn't sure she could talk her way out of it. The room fell into an uneasy silence. Olivia sat frozen, her usual air of confidence slipping beneath the weight of Mr. Bennet's words. She had dealt with demanding clients before, celebrities, billionaires, and powerful executives, but this was different. She had humiliated the man who owned the hotel. And now, her future rested entirely in his hands. Keanu Reeves leaned back in his chair, studying her with a calmness that was far more unsettling than anger. There was no malice in his gaze, no smugness, no need to put her in her place. But there was something else, a quiet disappointment. Olivia swallowed hard and finally forced herself to meet his eyes. "Mr. Reeves," she began, her voice softer now, less polished. I apologize if I came across as rude. It was never my intention to be disrespectful." Keanu tilted his head slightly, as if weighing her words. "Is that how you saw it?" he asked quietly. "Just, coming across as rude?" The question hung in the air. For once, Olivia had no immediate answer. She prided herself on being quick, always having the right words to smooth over any situation. But this wasn't just a disgruntled guest, this was the man who could end her career with a single word. "I was doing my job," she said, though the usual edge in her voice was gone. "We get all kinds of people walking in, some who waste our time, some who cause problems." I thought, she hesitated, choosing her next words carefully. "I thought I was protecting the hotel's image." Keanu let out a soft breath that might have been a chuckle, though not the kind that put anyone at ease. "And you thought I was a problem," he said simply. Her stomach twisted. "I misjudged you," she admitted, and for once, her words weren't calculated. "I assumed you weren't the usual kind of guest." Keanu glanced toward Mr. Bennet, who remained silent, observing the exchange closely. Then, turning his attention back to Olivia, he leaned forward slightly. His expression softened, not with pity, but with something gentler. "Understanding, maybe." "I get it," Keanu said quietly. "Appearances are everything in a place like this. People judge by what they see. You're not the first person to do it, and you won't be the last." Olivia felt a strange flutter of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't here to destroy her. "But here's the thing," he continued, his voice warm but firm. "When I bought this hotel, I wanted it to be more than just another luxury spot for the rich and famous. I wanted it to feel human. Like anyone who walked through those doors, whether they're wearing a $1,000 suit or an old leather jacket, would be treated with kindness and dignity." His words hung heavy in the room, making Olivia's previous behavior feel even colder in comparison. "I wasn't looking for special treatment," Keanu added. "I just wanted to see how we treat people when no one's watching." His eyes locked onto hers. "And honestly, it wasn't great." Olivia's heart pounded harder. She wanted to defend herself, to point out how hard she worked, how much pressure she was under. But for once, the excuses wouldn't come. Because deep down, she knew he was right. She hesitated, the polished mask slipping away. "I've been so focused on maintaining the hotel's reputation that maybe I lost sight of people." For the first time since she entered the room, Keanu smiled faintly. It wasn't a triumphant smile, it was the smile of someone who still believed people could do better if given the chance. "I'm not here to fire you, Olivia," he said gently. The breath she didn't realize she was holding slipped out in a rush. Relief flooded her veins, though she kept her composure. "But I am asking for something," Keanu added, his tone growing serious again. "Anything," Olivia said quickly, her voice more sincere than it had been all evening. "I want you to remember how much power you have behind that desk," he said. "A smile, a little patience, that can change someone's entire experience. And you never really know who you're speaking to. It could be someone important, or just someone having a bad day who needs a little kindness." Olivia nodded slowly, the weight of his words sinking in. She had spent so long curating an image of efficiency and authority that she had forgotten what hospitality was really about. Keanu stood, smoothing his jacket. "I'll be staying a few more days," he said. "I'd like to think the next guest who doesn't fit your mold will get a little more kindness. Deal?" Her throat tightened, but she managed a small, genuine smile. "Deal." Without another word, Keanu extended a hand. Olivia hesitated for only a heartbeat before shaking it, the warmth of his grasp surprising her. As he turned to leave, Mr. Bennet finally spoke, his tone softer than before. "Consider this a second chance, Olivia. Don't waste it." When the door closed behind them, Olivia sat there in silence. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't thinking about promotions, status, or appearances. She was thinking about people. And how, sometimes, the most important ones were the ones you least expected. The door to Mr. Bennet's office closed with a soft click, leaving Olivia alone in the heavy silence. Her heart still pounded in her chest as she replayed Keanu Reeves' words in her mind. Despite her relief at keeping her job, a strange mix of embarrassment and frustration gnawed at her. She had worked tirelessly to maintain her professional image, to prove herself in an industry where every detail mattered. Yet, with a single misstep, everything she had built seemed fragile. One mistake, one wrong assumption, and it had almost cost her everything. Taking a steady breath, Olivia rose from the chair and straightened her blazer. She couldn't afford to dwell on her mistakes. Not here. Not now. If Keanu Reeves wanted her to treat every guest with kindness, fine, she would do it. She would play the game, smooth the rough edges of her personality, and keep climbing the ladder. But deep down, a flicker of resentment burned. He didn't know what it was like to fight for every opportunity. Keanu Reeves, an A-list movie star and the owner of the hotel, had never struggled to prove his worth the way she had. It was easy to preach kindness when you had nothing to lose. By the time she returned to the front desk, her expression was polished and composed again. The lobby buzzed with activity, guests in designer gowns murmured near the cocktail lounge while bellhops bustled past with gleaming luggage carts. Everything was back to normal. At least, on the surface. Jacob, the assistant manager, hovered nearby, his eyes flicking nervously toward her. "So, how did it go?" he asked hesitantly. "I still have a job," Olivia replied crisply, logging back into the reservation system. Jacob let out a low whistle. "Wow. I thought you were toast. The guy's a legend, and you basically iced him out." "I was doing my job," Olivia said coolly, though her grip on the keyboard tightened. "Right," Jacob murmured, though his tone held a hint of doubt. "Well, guess it's a good thing he's nice. Anyone else would have fired you on the spot." Olivia didn't respond. She knew he was right. Most hotel owners, or any powerful man, for that matter, would have relished the opportunity to humiliate an employee who had disrespected them. Keanu's kindness had saved her. But instead of feeling grateful, she felt something else entirely. Why did he get to test her? Why did he hold all the power? She swallowed the bitter taste rising in her throat and forced herself to focus. If Keanu Reeves wanted warmth and hospitality, she would deliver it flawlessly. But she would also protect herself. No more assumptions, no more mistakes. And above all, no one, no matter how famous, would catch her off guard again. A flicker of motion caught her eye. Across the lobby, Keanu stood near the cafe, chatting quietly with an older couple. Despite his simple clothes and unassuming posture, the staff now treated him like royalty, polite smiles, deferential bows. The change was immediate and obvious. And yet, he didn't seem to notice. Or care. He laughed softly at something the elderly man said, his warmth genuine. For a moment, Olivia's irritation wavered. How could someone with that much power remain so human? "Miss Hastings?" A crisp voice pulled her from her thoughts. Olivia turned to see a sharply dressed woman approaching the desk. Her posture radiated authority, and the way she held herself suggested that she was someone important. Behind her trailed two assistants, both juggling phones and clipboards. "Yes, how may I assist you?" Olivia asked, slipping back into her professional tone. "I'm Veronica Sinclair," the woman said, placing a sleek black card on the desk. "I'm here to finalize arrangements for the charity gala this weekend." Olivia's heart gave a jolt of recognition. The annual Grand Arcadia Charity Gala was the event of the year, an opulent affair where the city's wealthiest philanthropists gathered to donate millions. Handling those arrangements meant direct exposure to the hotel's most elite clientele. "I'll personally oversee everything," Olivia said smoothly, picking up the card. "Would you like to review the ballroom setup, Miss Sinclair?" Veronica's sharp gaze swept over Olivia, assessing her in a way that felt uncomfortably familiar. "Yes," she said. "But I need someone who understands the importance of discretion. Our guests expect a certain refinement." Olivia's jaw tightened slightly. First Keanu Reeves, now this. Did no one trust her professionalism anymore? "You can count on me," Olivia assured her, keeping her voice steady. "We'll see," Veronica murmured, already moving toward the private elevators. As Olivia followed, she caught a glimpse of Keanu once more. He stood by the window now, hands tucked into his jacket pockets, gazing out at the city. He wasn't paying her any attention. But somehow, it felt like his shadow still lingered over her. And as much as she wanted to forget the lesson he had just taught her, she couldn't shake the feeling that her real test was only beginning.